Adam Jude posted an article earlier on Wednesday talking about the Mariners' middle infield options. Now, there's some names here that we've talked about quite a bit, but there's one name at the end of this article that we haven't talked about, and that is Brandon Lowe. So we're going to talk about what he could bring to the Mariners, what it may cost to get him. We're going to give you guys our FanDuel favorites before talking about the new draft pick that the Mariners were just awarded in a lottery or something like that, the comp round B pick, and the fact that that is tradable. What could the Mariners do with that? We're going to talk about that in this episode of the Hit It Here podcast, episode 255 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav Network and presented by FanDuel. And this is the Jason episode of the podcast. Jason bought one of our sweatshirts over on our fourth wall shop about a month ago. Shout out to you, Jason. I wish we would have caught it sooner. Our bad on that front. Hopefully you've gotten it by now, and I bet you're looking fly as hell. And speaking of looking fly as hell, I am here with Joe in his new One Battle After Another t-shirt. It's a good one. How we doing?
Doing great, man. It's not necessarily new. I've had it for a while, but debut on the podcast. This is my movie. This is the shirt I wear going to movies because, like, duh. It's a movie shirt I wear going to the movies. The first time I wore it, no joke, first time. Ticket guy was like, dude, love your shirt. And I was like, that's my guy. And then we kissed. We didn't do that. That was just like in my head. It was like a Family Guy cut. Doesn't matter. Colton, Adam Jude. What?
No, keep going. I'm listening.
You want me to talk more about the kiss? I'm just kidding. Adam Jude. I don't want to say like dropped like a whale of an article on Wednesday, but one that I think provides a bit more clarity as the winter meetings are arriving shortly. This Sunday, we're pretty close. Pretty stinking close to the winter meetings. And what does that mean for the Mariners? What does it mean for, I guess, the rest of Major League Baseball? Like, will we see more action than in years past in the winter meetings? It's entirely possible, but the way that the Mariners have kind of positioned themselves for the winter meetings seems like they're looking at middle infield help. And after re-signing Josh Naylor and getting, a couple, I guess, fringe bullpen arms, some being more valuable than others, turning their attention mainly to the middle infield feels like a pretty standard process for what we could have expected out of them going into the offseason. We knew that first base was a priority, obviously with Josh Naylor, and then bullpen and second base would be the second and third, just kind of depending on where how they decided to operate in that way. Not the big bullpen arm yet, but the big middle infielder seems like it's the next move on the horizon. And you said kind of at the beginning, it's guys we've talked about before. Everyone's talked about Brendan Donovan and Jorge Polanco. None more than you talking about Brendan Donovan, more than likely. He's your guy. And this article from Jude kind of lays out more so the information about Jorge Polanco and the interest and the mutual interest between him and Seattle and what it means for the Mariners going forward. And it's not surprising to me that there is the mutual interest between the two parties, but it's also not surprising to me that it seems like Polanco's kind of seeing how the market's going to develop first and kind of weighing options. I think the Mariners do have an upper hand in some of the beginnings of the starts of negotiations as far as what other teams may be interested in Jorge Polanco's services as a switch hitting second baseman, but maybe mainly a DH. Kind of depends on how you feel about that. He had a great season last year. The other teams that Jude notes are the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Pirates. And of those teams, I feel, obviously the Mariners as well, I feel that the Mariners are the best positioned to have quality conversations with Jorge because he's already been here for 2 seasons. He proved that he could do it. Why not bring him back? And Jorge, why not come back? Run it back with the boys again. You did it once. You had success with it. Do it again. Just do it again. It's that simple. It's that simple. That's all I ask.
I found it interesting that Jude noted that, Polanco's preference is to come back to Seattle because honestly, I felt like we hadn't heard a whole lot about that. I mean, it makes sense, right? We know the Mariners want to bring Polo back. We know that it makes sense to put him at second base if you have to. Jude also notes in this one that they're going to he talks about Gino
Mm-hmm.
and how the Mariners wouldn't mind bringing Gino back, but they have every intention of giving the opportunity to both Ben Williamson and Colt Emerson over there at third base in spring training to let one of them win a job. He mentioned Gino possibly playing first base a little bit, like maybe with giving Naylor a day off, Gino DHing, you know?
I'm giving myself a
Yeah.
pat on the back. When I first brought up the idea of Gino coming back, I said the secret third option was him to play first base if we didn't get Naylor. It's still technically there. It's just like a doggy door instead of the full door. It's like it's a French door. Instead of both doors opening, it's just one kind of going through. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Worth noting in this article, Jude did confirm that Michael Arroyo is moving to left field for this season, which we touched on in the last podcast, but it's good to actually have it officially confirmed by, Adam Jude himself. Moving on to Brendan Donovan. I mean, again, what else can we say about the guy that we haven't said already? Jude mentions that he could play a similar role as Dylan Moore. However, Donovan would be more of an everyday guy, whereas Moore ended up being more of a kind of a role player after he struggled quite a bit. So Donovan, you can put him in the outfield. He's played shortstop. He's played third. I don't know how his arm holds up in those situations, but nonetheless, it's a versatility guy that you could add. Of course, Ketel Marte is mentioned to this one as well. Someone who we've talked about quite a bit over this offseason. And Jude says that the Mariners have one of the strongest farm systems, and they're especially stout in infield talent. They do not want to block those prospects with aging veterans, and committing 5 years to any second baseman deep into his 30s would be entirely out of character for the Mariners' roster construction operations. Listen, none of us expect them to go get Ketel Marte. It'd be crazy. No one's expecting them to go get a 32-year-old who is owed $91 million through his age 36 season, which is more than reasonable for the best second baseman in baseball. And I feel like it's safe to call him that in terms of at least offense on the offensive side of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so not Mariners to do something like that, like Jude mentions. And with Cole Young, Ryan Bliss, Leo Rivas, like you have guys at second base that need to be given an opportunity. And sure, maybe a couple of them go back in the trade to the Diamondbacks, but nonetheless, it's still, if the Mariners want to have cost-controlled guys in key spots, you want to have at least one of those guys come through and be hopefully an everyday guy. And whether that be Cole Young or Ryan Bliss or what have you, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's just which one can give you, at least league average offense. We already know they're going to play decent defense. So for the Mariners, I don't see Ketel Marte making some sense, but I think that both Marte and Donovan, in terms of the trade route, would be kind of a fun trade to make.
I think the phrasing committing 5 years to any second baseman, I think committing 5 years to anyone that's in their 30s, that for the Mariners specifically, it just doesn't seem like a typical move that they would make. And I find it interesting in that way. Like what that means is how far they're looking out for Polo. Like what they're willing to go with Gino. Like I don't think Gino's necessarily blocking anybody, but with the juxtaposition in this article about like giving Ben Williamson and Colt Emerson a shot, like it feels like a Gino reunion does feel a little bit further away than a Polo reunion, because it seems like Polo has a better spot, even though Cole Young is right there and there's Rio Rivas, Jesus criminy sakes, Ryan Bliss and Leo Rivas. Whoa, man. Struggle City over here.
My goodness.
There's just a lot going on. But Polo has, I think, a bit more of the DH spot etched out that we saw him in last year. And not to say that Gino can't do the same thing, but it feels that the fit with Polo has always made more sense than with Gino for whatever reason. And with the Ketel stuff, it feels so outlandish. Anybody that they're going to go out and trade for or acquire or sign, it just is simply going to be a shorter term situation to allow a lot of the more prospect laden mindset to kind of come to fruition. The draft, develop, trade idea. The Brendan Donovan, he's a free agent in not at the end of 26, but the end of 27, right? So it's like that gives guys time to develop. And if Colt Emerson isn't ready by opening day or middle season, which I won't be surprised if he isn't. Like, if he is, awesome. But like, if he's not, I'm not worried about it.
He's 20.
Yeah, he's got plenty of time to develop. That gives him a bigger safety net to kind of fall into with Brendan Donovan. Like, there's so many avenues for the Mariners to take this offseason, and the one that has been discussed, I think, a fair amount, but just not this specific offseason for us, is a familiar trade partner for the Mariners and Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander. But again, one that we haven't discussed, but one that we've discussed a lot in the past is Brandon Lowe, second baseman. And this is basically, if you don't get Polo, if you don't get Brendan Donovan, and you still feel like your best bet to help upgrade the offense on the position player side is with a second baseman DH type, that I will say I think Brandon Lowe is, he's only there for 1 year. He's not there for 2 like Brendan Donovan would be. He's not going to be there for 2 like you would be with Polo if you signed him. He's not going to be there for 5 if you traded for Ketel Marte. You'd have him for a year, and then Cole Young could take over the next year. I'm pretty sure. And Lowe didn't have his best season by any means last year, and a little bit of injury concern has been his problem, I think, in the past, where he's only ever played over 100 games. Like, it was, will he be able to eclipse over 100 games? And it's like, yes, in 23 and 24 he did. It's just, you only got 109 and 107. You never see him in like the 140 range, but he did accomplish that feat last year, damn near. In 2025 he played 134 games, put up a 114 WRC plus, a 1.7 F4. Not his best season by any means, but still a 30 homer potential season for Brandon Lowe at the second base spot. Like, it's good pop. It's, I think, a quality bat that has been, in the league for a while. And Jude mentions him at the tail end of his article that the M's have regularly been linked to Lowe in the past. It makes sense that if they were to circle back this year after maybe not reaching, similar terms with Polo, or not really wanting to meet the Cardinals on the cost that has been potentially given for Brendan Donovan, and not wanting to give almost $100 million to a guy for ages 32 through 37. Lowe feels like not even like a bad, plan D, but one that you'd feel good about as Mariners fans, as, yeah, this could be your secondary hitter you acquired this offseason, and feel pretty safe about it going into 2026.
I honestly look at Brandon Lowe as like a slightly worse version of Jorge Polanco.
Yeah.
He's not a switch hitter. That definitely plays a role with the Mariners potentially getting, a little too left-handed in certain spots of the lineup. But you look at his numbers in 2025. He hit 31 home runs. He hit 256, 307, 477, good for a 116 OPS plus with a 1.9 WAR. And you mentioned he's kind of a DH and second base type. Now, again, Polanco definitely gives you a little bit more versatility there. And I honestly think that Brandon Lowe's injury history is a little bit more scary, in my opinion. It's been his back, and backs are kind of fickle when it comes to injuries. But you look at his strikeout rate, it is a little high, and that's something that the Mariners may, kind of want to avoid. Now, of course, re-signing Josh Naylor helps that quite a bit. I think even re-signing Jorge Polanco could help that quite a bit. But in 2025, Brandon Lowe had about a 27% strikeout rate, which is pretty much par for the course for his career.
Mm-hmm.
He would be cheaper than Jorge Polanco. He's only making $11.5 million, and we know the Rays love to trade away anybody making more than like $5. And he's in the last year of his deal. So like you mentioned, he's not going to be blocking anybody. If Jorge Polanco gets more money to go sign with the Red Sox, right? I think Brandon Lowe is a perfectly good fallback plan. And I don't think that he's going to get traded all of a sudden, like here in the next week or so, although the winter meetings are coming up. So maybe I'll clip that part if I have to eat my words later. But he might be sticking around till closer to the season, and that gives the Mariners some time to figure out what's going on with Jorge Polanco, to figure out what's going on with Brendan Donovan, if they want to be in the running for Ketel Marte. Brandon Lowe is a completely fine, like you mentioned, plan D. And I think that you can slot him in the middle of your order. He's going to play 100 and hopefully 140 games, although I wouldn't count on it. And maybe if you're able to give him more DH time, maybe he can play a little bit more. I'm not sure. But I think that Brandon Lowe, and for what it would cost, it really shouldn't cost you that much in terms of prospect capital and in terms of a potential trade of a draft pick. I personally wouldn't bet on it. But quickly, a word from FanDuel.
Thank you to FanDuel for being a sponsor for the Hit It Here podcast. The FanDuel Sportsbook, the home of the same game parlay, is your go-to destination for online sports gambling this season. Obviously, the baseball season's over, but the NBA is in full swing. The NFL's in full swing. You've got college football, you got hockey, you got college basketball. There's a variety of different sports that you can bet on over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, if you bet $5, you could get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Remember to do it responsibly. And now back to the podcast.
The only kind of draft pick that is tradable in baseball, you can at least bet on that. And the Mariners were awarded a comp round B pick. Now, the way that the comp rounds work, this is a compensatory draft pick for the Mariners, where with comp round A, it is after the first round. Comp round B is after the second round. In 2025, comp round B was right around picks like 66 through like 73, give or take. And I don't necessarily know if it works out that way every year. I didn't actually go back and look, but nonetheless, the Mariners have another draft pick there. And while we know that the Mariners are a team that loves to draft, another team that loves to draft is the Rays. And could they be interested in a comp round B pick plus a prospect or two for Brandon Lowe? They absolutely could be. And I think that that could be a pretty good value for the Mariners. But if you're trading like a pick 66 through 77, are you going to get like a better player than Brandon Lowe? I mean, unlikely. I mean, it's just the way the draft works. It's probably unlikely. Could you? Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. There have been plenty of guys the Mariners have gotten in the past that are fantastic that they drafted in the third or the fourth round. You know what I mean? It's just the draft is such a, it takes a very, very good player development system like the Mariners to make the draft continuously churn out a lot of great players. And thankfully the Mariners have been really good at that. But I find this pick very valuable. I wish it was a comp round A. Would have been even more valuable. But I find this pick really valuable for the Mariners if they do want to make a trade this offseason.
Saying that, like, if it was a comp round A, the Mariners drafted Luke Stevenson in the comp round A in 2025. That's a, top 15 prospect in a pretty, not just top, but like a deep farm system in general as far as top 30s are concerned. And you're thinking about, like, what does a comp round B look like? I imagine it's somewhere in like the 20 to 25 range. It could be, depending on the year, depending on the draft class. And if we're talking about trading with the Rays, say for Brandon Lowe, who I will say I'm not like I'd be very okay with it. It's just you have to find someone that can be a little bit of a platoon situation. That he's pretty below average versus left-handers. A 194 batting average in 139 at bats, like not great. So who do the Mariners have on their major league roster that is a right-handed DH potentially? I mean, that's looking like Cal Raleigh and Harry Ford catching. If I was anyone to write the lineup, aka Dan Wilson, anytime a lefty's on the mound, Brandon Lowe's sitting, Cal's DHing, and Harry Ford's catching. Bang. And who's playing second base? If it's Cole Young, maybe it's Brandon Lowe. You just have maybe
it's Ryan Bliss.
Yeah, who knows, right? But if you're trading with the Rays and you're thinking about what this comp B pick could look like, if it's a top 20 or, between 20 and 25 player, like, what are you trading for Brandon Lowe? Are you trading like 2 top 30 guys, or like you trading, because we know the Rays don't necessarily want, not that they don't want major league talent, but like they like control. They like guys that they can kind of stash for a sec and then add to their 40 men a little bit later. Like, are you trading Ty Pete and the comp pick for Brandon Lowe? Because we know how much the Rays are in love with Ty Pete, and they have been for a while. I don't know. I think that might be maybe it's too rich for Brandon Lowe, just for a 1 year second baseman, if I'm going to put quotes around that because his defensive metrics are pretty bad, pretty awful. And he's not like, yeah, he played the majority of his season last year at second base, but that's not necessarily saying that he should have. It's just that that's where the Rays put him. And if he's on the Mariners, I imagine he's going to DH a bit more. So if we're trading this comp pick to the Rays, in this hypothetical situation where it's a 60 to 75 ish pick in the 2026 draft, a top 25 ish prospect eventually. I don't know how much more you need to add other than like if you said like a comp pick and two prospects, like those two prospects to me, I know that you were just kind of like spitballing, you were just being pretty, broad, but those are two lottery picks. Like those are not lottery picks, lottery tickets type players, like flyers, if they're also getting a comp pick. Because I like in this draft, like in the draft, you can go more like a major league close guys in the like in a comp B and be okay, and they could be ready for the pros in 2 years. Whereas if you're trading from your top 30, like with the Rays, like how does that work? Like would they want DeWall Joseph? Would they want Leandro Romero? Like do they want guys that are super far away that they're allowed to develop a bit more and take their time with? Or this comp B, I mean, again, they could draft the most live arm out of high school if they wanted to in that spot if he's there. A guy that throws 106, but he can't find the mitt. He finds the backstop every time. Who knows what's available in the 2026 draft? But if this comp B pick is going to the Rays, I don't imagine, especially for Brandon Lowe, I don't imagine much more would be needed given how valuable that pick really can be.
Yeah, I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head when you mentioned that the Rays generally have a bit of a roster crunch. They're 40 men. They're always a team that is very susceptible to the Rule 5 draft. Every single year, it's been that way for as long as I can remember. And because of that, they might want guys that they feel are maybe a little bit further away that they're not going to have to add to their 40-man roster. And so I think, like you mentioned, like one of even the DSL guys, someone young, an 18-year-old lottery ticket who could be something, could be nothing. And it's similar to when the Mariners traded for Adam Lind back in the day and they traded Freddie Peralta. Okay, similar idea, right? You're getting a left-handed power guy last year of his contract who's really not good defensively. Similar idea, you trade away a DSL guy like Kendry Martinez or something like that, or DeWall Joseph or what have you.
Yeah.
And the comp round pick, I think that's more than fine. If the Rays are willing to take that, especially because the Mariners would probably be taking on that entire salary of 11.5 million, which definitely plays a role when you're discussing with the Rays, because they're a small market team. They're a team that is always in the bottom part of the league in terms of payroll. They should, and I will be shocked if one of Brandon Lowe and Yandy Diaz is not traded this offseason. I'll be shocked. I mean, they already declined the option on Pete Fairbanks.
Yeah.
Who was like, and he's going to probably make 10 plus after what we've seen literally every reliever go for this offseason. Emilio Pagan just signed a 2-year, $20 million deal with the Reds earlier today. So,
did he really?
He did, probably while you were at the movies. Yeah, he's
wow.
re-signed with the Reds. So, $10 million a year for Emilio Pagan. So, yeah, I would assume that Pete Fairbanks is probably going to get like 12. But anyway, that's kind of a bit of a tangent. But the Mariners, I think, could make this trade relatively easily because A, they know the Rays inside and out and how they like to deal, and B, the Mariners are going to probably be willing to take on $11 million. Now, this is assuming they don't get Jorge Polanco. That's assuming. Again, this is further down the pipeline. Like if you can sign Jorge Polanco, you do that. But if you miss on all those guys and you still have money to spend, then sure, maybe you spend $11.5 million on Brandon Lowe and then go out there and get a bigger reliever of some kind, someone who's making a little bit. Maybe then you go get Pete Fairbanks or something, because now you have a little bit more money than you thought you were going to have to spend on the bullpen and try to shore up that part of the roster instead. I don't know. It's a really interesting conversation, but that comp round B pick, I think, just added a whole nother layer of, I guess, a whole nother layer of like contention to what the Mariners could trade. Does that make sense? Is that a word? Does that word make sense, Joe? A layer of
like
anyway, it's
like
a little bit a wrinkle.
a wrinkle.
There's It added a wrinkle into Mariners trade plans because now they have a
Got
draft
it.
pick they can trade, which
I
is
got where you were going. It just
yeah,
took me a
yeah, yeah.
second.
The words were not there.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I'm excited to see what the Mariners can do with that draft pick.
I'm looking at the other teams in so comp round A and comp round B. Round A, Guardians, Royals, D-backs, Cardinals, Orioles, Pirates, Rockies. Round B, Brewers, Mariners, Tigers, Reds, Marlins, Rays, A's, Twins. Is
Mm,
there a like famously bad team not in these comp rounds? There's two, I think. The
go
White
on.
Sox and the Angels. Now, the Angels and the Mariners, they're never going to link up because, Jerry DiPoto, did bad things to the Angels franchise apparently. They're not allowed to be friends at all. But like, could a White Sox Mariners trade materialize if the White Sox want to load up on like draft capital in 2026? Not necessarily load up. It's not like the NBA where the White Sox could trade Luis Robert for 4 firsts. You know what I mean? Like we're not Milwaukee trading Giannis to the Hawks for 6 first-round picks. We're not doing that. But and I'm glad that baseball's not that way. God, that would be
Same,
so annoying. That would be
same.
so annoying. Like, don't get me wrong, tangent. I hate the Thunder, but what they've been able to do through the draft by trading all their good players and being really bad for like half a decade, they're 21-1 after they just won the championship. Like, that's a problem. If that doesn't show you that being able to trade picks like that's a problem, thank God the MLB is the way it is with the draft. I think personally, and
Agree.
I might be biased, but I think a trade with the White Sox where they know that they're not really contending. I think being able to try and like change the narrative about how they go about their business as far as like the way that they draft, the way that they develop, like I think that they got a pretty good return as far as what we've seen so far with the Garrett Crochet trade. Being able to draft more guys that could maybe come up and be part of that core might not be a bad idea. Is there anyone worthwhile on the White Sox is the better question. And I'm sure you could find a reliever not named Gregory Santos, to trade from the White Sox potentially. But it's hard. Like I'm just trying to think of like bad teams, put quotes around bad teams, or maybe it's a good team that want to have a bit more stay in the draft that I'm not thinking about right now. Like what's a fringe? It's not even like it doesn't have to be small market teams either. Like big market teams can play well in the draft and like capitalize on those things. So it's like, what teams could the Mariners link up with that historically just maybe have like weak farm systems or have like, could the Mariners trade with the Padres and the Padres try and recoup value here so Preller has more ammo to fire at the deadline this coming season? You know what I mean? Or I guess in 2027, if he's not going to trade the 2026 pick, the 73rd pick in the 2026 draft immediately shipped off to whatever team for, the best reliever on the market, apparently. Like, I think that, like you said, there's a wrinkle added to how the Mariners can attack this offseason if they choose to do so. What they could do is they could trade existing prospects in their system and use this pick to fill that spot. And they'd probably be okay with doing that too. It's just we haven't really seen the Mariners trade a bunch of like top end heavy prospects. And I don't know if they feel comfortable enough to do that. And I don't know if there's really someone out there like a big fish to go out and trade a bunch of like it would be Ketel Marte where certainly a full circle conversation. One that seems like the Mariners are relatively uncomfortable doing, but also like food for thought. They trade 3 top 10 prospects in their system. So that's basically 3 top 100s. And then like, another one in the top 20 and then a major league ready player of some sort if it's a Bryce Miller. Like a very hefty package. We're dreaming for the Diamondbacks here. This comp round B pick can make them feel better about where their farm system could be. Again, it's not like you're kind of putting duct tape on a big split in a concrete wall. For those that get it, they get it. With a comp round B pick, replacing 3 top 100 prospects. But like, I think the idea is enough there where if the Mariners trade from their existing farm system, that having this comp round B pick in 2026 will help them just continue to draft, develop, and trade.
That was a similar conversation that we had going into the draft this year and talking about the trade deadline as well. Is the Mariners, because they had, what were they picked? They were picked 3, right? So it was they had the pick number 3, they should be willing to trade maybe an upper echelon guy because they're about to immediately refill it with that pick number 3. Now that pick number 3 ended up being Cade Anderson, of course, and so like maybe Drangelo Sanja, what have you guys get it, but in 2026, if they decide to do that, maybe it's not like a Laz or a Cade Anderson or any of like none of the upper echelon guys, but I would not be shocked if the Mariners were to go out there and trade some of their like 8 to like 15 ranked prospects. Because that's where it feels like they're going to be able to fill in the draft in 2026, especially some of those guys that are maybe further away. You already mentioned Ty Pete, for example, is a guy who kind of far away, probably doesn't really have a spot for the Mariners. Could they trade him, especially after the season that he had? Like, I think it makes some sense. He's going to fall down rankings quite a bit. Maybe. I mean, this year it's in my opinion, 2 years in a row where his strikeout rate's astronomical. Like, it's going to be tough, but the Mariners can immediately replace that in the draft this year. And I think that what we saw from them at the deadline in 2025 was a sign of things to come. They finally traded away some of their prospects, albeit none of them like the upper echelon.
Yeah.
But Tyler Locklear was ranked like number 6 or something like that. He was a top 10. Like,
yeah.
He was a top 10. And sure, a few years ago they traded like Aiden Smith and Brody Hopkins, and like where were those guys at? I think Hopkins is like number 2 or 3 now on the Rays farm system, or maybe it's Smith is 2 or 3. Yeah,
he's third. Smith is 6.
Yeah, so it's like those are some top guys the Mariners have traded. I think that this is a sign of things to come. They're in win now mode, and a draft pick like this just opens up a world of possibilities for them come this offseason. But let us know in the comments down below what you guys think and if the Mariners should trade this pick. We appreciate you guys watching episode 255 of the Hit It Here podcast presented by FanDuel, and go Mariners.